Hello everyone, welcome back. We got another pre-recorded video talking about some season preview series video, talking about the Philadelphia Flyers and the Columbus Blue Jackets, two teams who missed the playoffs last year. Look at how they did last year, how they did in the offseason, and how they're shaping up going into the 24-25 season. We'll talk all that coming up right now. Hello everyone, welcome back to another pre-recorded video here at the Internet Hockey Channel. Before we get into this video, don't forget to like this video and subscribe down below. Thank you for all your support when able to help you guys. So if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe button down below. Don't forget to comment down in the comment section below so you can also see this video. Now in today's video, we're looking at the last two Metro Division teams of our season preview series video, looking at the Philadelphia Flyers and the Columbus Blue Jackets. Two teams who, as much as they did both miss the playoffs, had vastly different seasons. So we'll start here with the Philadelphia Flyers. Finished with a record of 38, 33, and 11. Exceeded a lot of people's expectations for 89 points. However, they were in a playoff spot for a majority of the season, and then the late season collapse pushed them out of a playoff spot, wound up missing by 2 points. So Philadelphia definitely had a bad collapse towards the end of the season, even though they exceeded a lot of people's expectations. Finished 6th in the Metro Division, 11th in the Eastern Conference, and 21st in the NHL. So they did quite well, even though they did not get into the playoffs. There were 235 goals for, 27th in the NHL. So they were nearly a bottom 5 team in the goals scoring department. They were awful when it comes to goal scoring, and goals against wasn't too much better. They were in the bottom half of the league in the goals against department, giving up 261 goals against, which was 18th in the NHL. So it was around average. It was a lot better than their goal scoring, but still, it wasn't at the top half of the NHL. So way too bad offense, not good enough defense, and as a late season collapse led this team to falling out of a playoff spot. So interesting note there. If you look at the team's scoring leaders, Konecny led the team with 68 points. It was a really good season there for Konecny. Really showed his great potential there in Philadelphia, so it was a really good point total there for Konecny. While Tippett and Farabee also had plus 50 points, Tippett hitting 53 and Farabee hitting 50. Those were the three highest point players for the Philadelphia Flyers, so it was a decent season. None of them hit over 70, but they did have a couple of people who did hit over 50, so interesting note there. If you look at their goal scorers, Konecny led the team with 33 goals, so over a 3-goal season. Pretty good season there again from Konecny. While Tippett had 28 goals for, and Farabee had 22, so once again, not overly great when you only have one 30-plus goal scorer, but still, it was an interesting season there from the Philadelphia Flyers. The rookie scoring leader was Tyson Forrester, who had 20 goals, 13 assists, 33 points. It was a pretty good rookie there for the Philadelphia Flyers, so interesting note there. But still, like we said, not an overly great season, collapse at the end of it. No really good goal scoring, mediocre to low-end defense, so not overly great stuff there. Like we said, bright spots like Konecny, Tippett, good to see those guys do well, but still, it wasn't an overly great season there from the Flyers. If you look at their additions and losses, it's very short here. I'm going to get through this really quickly. If you look at their additions, they brought back Bobby Brink, Adam Ginning, Igor Zamula, and Eric Johnson, 3 RFAs. Johnson, who was UFA, so interesting to see them bring back those guys. They also bring in Anthony Richard, who's a depth forward, and for agency, they're a lone free agent addition. If you look at their extensions, they extend Travis Konecny and Garnet Hathaway. Konecny on an 8-year deal. Looks pretty good. That's going to be a really good pickup there for the Flyers to keep Konecny for the long term. Well, they also extend Garnet Hathaway, solid bomb 6 forward, really good physical player, guy who Tortorella really likes. So good to see him sign an extension over the next little while, so interesting note there. If you look at their losses, they lose Dennis Gurianov, who's currently UFA, they lose Mark Staal, who winds up retiring, and they lose Cam Atkinson, who they bought out and winds up heading to Tampa Bay as a UFA. So all in all, they didn't really do a whole bunch. They also didn't make any trades in the offseason, so lose a couple of guys, bought out 1 player, lose 2 UFAs, bring in 1 UFA, bring back a couple of RFAs. Really didn't do a whole bunch this offseason. Interesting note there. If you look at their top 3 picks in this past year's draft, you have Jet Luchenko, who's a center, who was picked up in the first round, 13th overall. Looks like a very fantastic player, going to be eventually a solid second, third line center there for the Philadelphia Flyers. Then Jack Berglund was taken in the 2nd round, 51st overall, another center prospect. I think eventually could be a solid third, fourth line center there for the Flyers. And they also have Spencer Gill, who was another 2nd round pick, 59th overall, right-shot defenseman. I think eventually could be a third, maybe second pair of defenseman there for the Flyers. Interesting note there. If you look at the 2 biggest questions, in my opinion, for the Flyers entering training camp, it's 1, where will Michkov play? Michkov's coming over from overseas, signed his ELC. Really good news there for the Flyers, but where does he play in the lineup? Is he a first-line player? Is he a second-line player? Does he sit on his 3rd line? He's definitely going to be in our top 9, but I think the big question is he a first-line, second-line, or third-line player? Where does he play and who does he play with? That's my big question for them. Plus, who starts the net? Last year, Carter Hart started net, but then due to 22-year-old junior stuff, he wound up leaving and being being suspended basically, so that led Urson to be the starter, and he was starter for basically the entire season, sort of ran out of gas. So will Urson be the starter again for this upcoming season? Will Ivan Fedotov, who got into a couple of games at the end of last year, be the starter? That's going to be an interesting situation we have to watch out for. So in my opinion, two biggest questions for the Flyers entering training camp is one, where will Michkov play? And two, who starts the net? Is it Urson or is it Fedotov or is it someone else? Definitely we need to know on that. So those are my two biggest questions for the Philadelphia Flyers. Next, going over to my projected lineup for the Philadelphia Flyers for this upcoming season. At this current point in time, I have Travis Konecny playing on line 1 with Matvei Michkov and Sean Couturier. On line 2, I have Tippett, Frost, and Farabee. On line 3, I have Forrester playing with Scott Laughton and Bobby Brink. And line 4, I have Poehling, Hathaway, and Delorier. So that's a really hard-hitting fourth line. On the defensive end, I have York playing with Sanheim. I have Seeler playing with Drysdale. And I have Zamula playing with Ristolainen. That's a pretty decent defensive core too. In that, I have Sam Urson being the starter. I have Fedotov being the backup. I have Cates, Rizzo, and Johnson being the 3 spares. And I have Ryan Ellis starting on long-term injury reserve. And that would be a cap compliant roster so long as Ellis starts on long-term injury reserve. So that's an interesting sort of lineup there for the Philadelphia Flyers. If you look at my current projected point total for Flyers for this upcoming season, I have them taking a big step back. I think they surprised a lot of teams last year. Were a really good team. A lot of people thought there would be an easy team to go against. They didn't really do anything in the offseason. Plus, I think a lot of teams are going to be expecting them to be a good team now, so I think they're going to go a lot harder than the Philadelphia Flyers. So, in my opinion, I'm going to see them be last in the Metro Division this year. I think they're going to finish with a record of 34, 45, and 3 for 71 points, 16 points lower than last year. No, I predicted them to be last in the Metro Division last year too. That never happened, but I do think this is going to be a season where the Flyers take a step back and are going to be a top 5 team in the lottery. So, in my opinion, I think Philadelphia is finally going to take that step back that we were all expecting them to do last year. I think they're going to finish with 71 points, 16 lower than last year, and be a low-end team this year instead of just missing out on the playoffs. So that's my current projections for the Philadelphia Flyers for the upcoming season. If I look at 3 ways this team can improve to get better for next year, one, they need more scoring. This team last year did not do overly well in this goal scoring department. We saw 27th in the NHL in goal scoring. That's not going to cut it. If they're going to try and improve and get to the playoffs next year, so they need to have some more goal scoring. Michkov could probably help with that, but they need more goal scoring from this team. 2 is better goaltending. Like we said, goaltending, especially towards the end of the season, was not overly good. Can Fedotov and Urson recreate what happened earlier last year with Hart and Urson and see them have some really good games in the net? I think that's going to be a big question as to how this team can improve. And 3, they can't collapse. If they do get close to a playoff spot towards the end of the season, they can't collapse what they did last year. If they are close, they need to try and figure out a way to try and work out ways that they do not collapse, because last year was basically the worst way. They could have tanked and had a little bit of a lower pick, or they could have made the playoffs, but they were in the mushy middle, which is always a really hard spot for teams. So in my opinion, I think they really need to try and improve and not collapse if they do get close to a playoff spot. So in my opinion, 3 is this team can improve, more goal scoring, consistent goaltending, and don't collapse if they do get close to a playoff spot. So that's my opinion on the Flyers and my rating for the Flyers. Now, like I said, they didn't do anything this offseason. They bought out Cam Atkinson, lost a couple of low-end UFAs, brought in a low-end UFA, extended Konecny and Hathaway, brought back a couple of RFAs, signed Michkov. So they didn't really do a whole bunch. So I'm going to give them a C rating. They didn't really get better. They didn't really get worse either. So I think a C rating is basically warranted for where the Flyers are at this point in time. And I think that's a decent rating for the Flyers after what they've done. So interesting note there. Going over to the Columbus Blue Jackets. So going over to the Columbus Blue Jackets, this past year was another bad season for the Blue Jackets. Finished with a record of 27, 43, and 12 for 66 points. That was dead last in the Metro, dead last in the Eastern Conference, 8th and 16th, and then they were 29th in the NHL. So they were a really bad team last year. They didn't have very many bright spots last year for the Blue Jackets. Goals for, they had 237, which was 25th in the NHL. So in the lower half of the goals for the department, while goals against was one of the worst in the NHL. 300 goals against, 31st in the NHL, only ahead of the San Jose Sharks, who had another atrocious season defensively. So it was a bad season goal scoring wise, a abysmal season defensive wise, and they were one of the lowest teams in the league and the lowest team in the Eastern Conference. So not very many bright spots there for the Blue Jackets. This past year, point scoring leaders, Gaudreau led the team with 60 points. He had a decent season last year, but a down year for sure. You had Zach Werenski, who had 57 points, and Kirill Marchenko, who had 42 points. So those were the 3 scoring leaders there for the Blue Jackets. Their goal scoring leaders was Kirill Marchenko, who had a pretty good season actually last year with 23 goals scored. Looks like he's going to be eventually a 30 to 40 goal scorer. They have Jenner, who had 22 goals, and youngster Dmitry Voronkov, who had 18 goals. So interesting to note there, Voronkov actually had a very fantastic season. So to see him get third on the team in scoring scoring was actually quite good. The rookie scorer was Voronkov. He was their rookie scoring leader. He had 18 goals and 34 points. He was a fantastic player there for the Blue Jackets, and one of the young bright spots. Like I said, had a couple of bright spots. Marchenko hitting 20 goals was a bright spot. Voronkov having some really good steps was a bright spot. Juracek getting some playing time for the Jackets was a bright spot, but really not many bright spots there for the Blue Jackets as they missed the playoffs. Interesting note there. If you look at their additions and losses from this past year, it's not an overly long list here. If you look at their additions, they brought back Kirill Marchenko, Kent Johnson, Cole Sillinger, and Yuri Chinakhov. So not too many people they brought back. They, in free agency, add Owen Sillinger, who's Cole Sillinger's brother, probably will be an AHLer for the Jackets. They also bring in Sean Monahan, who should be a solid top 6 addition there for the Jackets. Dylan Gambrell, who should be a depth add on the forward group. Jack Johnson, who should be challenging for a third pair role. And Zach Sawchenko, who's a decent third string goaltender. So some decent depth adds besides Johnson and Monahan. Meanwhile, their losses, they lose Brennan Gaunce to Minnesota. He was a depth player, so that's not a huge loss. They buy out Adam Boqvist, and he goes to Florida, so that's a little bit of a big loss on the defensive end. They lose Alex Nylander, who had a very good finish to the season with the Jackets. He goes to the AHL to Toronto Marlies. Carson Mayer, who was a decent AHLer for them, call-up option, goes to Anaheim. Jake Bean, who had been a solid third pair defenseman for them, goes to Calgary. And Nick Blankenberg, who had been a decent call-up option for them, goes to Nashville. So lose a couple of really good defenders, but besides that, not really a whole bunch of really big losses there for the Jackets. Their big loss was, like we've talked about over the past couple of weeks, the unfortunate passing of Johnny Gaudreau. As much as that's a bad on-ice loss, as he was a really good hockey player, it's more of him being lost as a friend, as a family member, so it's still really sad to talk about the Johnny Gaudreau news, but still, we do have to acknowledge that as part of the Blue Jackets off-season, this was a really bad blow for them to see them lose Johnny Gaudreau, who was a good player, but also a good friend and family member, so that was a really bad blow for them. They did make 2 trades this season, none of them overly significant. There was one. They traded Alex Texier to the St. Louis Blues for a 2025 4th round pick. Texier wanted a fresh start. They get a 4th round pick in return for a decent third line forward. So that was a pretty good move there for the Blue Jackets. And then they also traded Patrick Laine and a 2026 2nd round pick to the Montreal Canadiens in exchange for Jordan Harris. So they get rid of the Laine contract, have to move a 2nd round to get off of it, but they also get Jordan Harris, who should be a solid top 4 defenseman for them. So they add some pretty good pieces there for the Blue Jackets, so that's really good news. Going over to their top 3 picks from this past year's draft. With their 1st round pick, 4th overall, they took really good player Caden Lindstrom. Lindstrom, who did suffer some injuries this past year, is a center left winger. Looks like he's eventually going to be a solid top 6 forward there for Columbus. A really good add to an already stacked forward group that has a lot of young pieces, so he's going to be a fantastic fit there for that team long term. So that's a pretty good pickup there for the Jackets with their 1st round pick. Then with their 2nd pick in the 2024 draft, they took in the 2nd round, 36th overall, Charlie Elik. Elik, who's a right shot defenseman, thought would have gone late 1st round, so lands in their lap early in the 2nd round. Is a very fantastic right shot defenseman who should eventually be a solid 2nd, maybe 3rd pair defenseman, so that's a pretty good pickup there. And they also took goaltending prospect Evan Gardner in the 2nd round as well, 60th overall. So a potential maybe future backup tandem goaltender for the Blue Jackets who could eventually be a really good pickup there for Columbus. So some pretty good pickups there in the draft. They did have a lot of picks, and I think they made a couple of really good ones. So interesting note there. 2 biggest questions in my opinion for this Blue Jackets team is 1, who will make the top 6 after the losses of Gaudreau and Laine? This team is lacking top 6 talent right now, so my question is which one of these younger guys is able to step up and take that top 6 role? Could a guy like Voronkov do it this year? Could Chinakhov, will Marchenko and Johnson be top 6 players? Like, those are going to be interesting questions. So one of my biggest questions for this team entering training camp is who will make the top 6, and 2nd is will Tarasov be a starter? Last year Merzlikins had a really bad season, one of the major reasons as to why this team was so bad in the goals against department. So my big question is, will Tarasov be the starter next year, or will Merzlikins still be the 1A? It's going to be an interesting situation to watch out for, but I think 2 biggest questions in my opinion during training camp for the Jackets is 1, who will make the top 6, and 2, will Tarasov be a starter this year? So that's going to be interesting to note there. Going over to my current projected lineup for the 24-25 season for the Columbus Blue Jackets. At this point in time, I currently have Kent Johnson playing on line 1 with Sean Monahan and Kirill Marchenko. I have line 2 being Gavin Brindley, who's a rookie, playing with Adam Fantilli and Boone Jenner. Line 3 is Voronkov, Sillinger, and Chinakhov. And line 4 is Mathieu Olivier with John Corrali and Justin Danforth. It's a decent and really young forward group. Defensively, I have Zach Werenski playing with Damon Severson, Ivan Provorov playing with David Juracek, and Jordan Harris playing with Eric Branson. That's a decent defensive core. I have Gambrell, Fix-Wolansky, and Jack Johnson being the 3 spares, with Merzlikins being the 1A, and Tarasov being the 1B. So I have a decent goaltending tandem there for the Jackets, and that would not be a cap compliant roster because of the Gaudreau passing. They are currently under the cap, so they may need to make a move or two to get themselves back over the cap, but at this current point in time, it would be close to a cap compliant roster. So interesting note there. Going over to my prediction for the Columbus Blue Jackets for this upcoming season. Now at this point in time, I have them doing better than last year. I had them near a 500 record, still way out of a playoff spot. Don't expect them to get into a playoff spot this year, but I do think they're going to take a little bit of a step forward. I think they're going to have a season where they have 80 points, so it's 14 higher than last year. It's still like 12, 13 points out of a playoff spot, so it's not like they're going to get right back into a playoff spot. But I do think they're going to take a little bit of a step forward, get near the 500 mark, and put some of those bad seasons behind them. So in my opinion, Jackets are going to take a little bit of a step forward, hit 80 points, get out of the basement of the Metro Division, get 14 higher than last year, but still be nowhere close to a playoff spot. So that's my prediction for the Blue Jackets as it is right now. Three areas I can see this team improve to get better for next year is one, they need better goaltending. We saw it last year, really atrocious goaltending, so they need a little bit better goaltending. Merzlikins needs to have a bounce back season, and Tarasov needs to show he has starter level capabilities if this team's going to improve from where they were last year. Two, more solid defense. Last year, like we said, as much as the goaltending was a big problem, defense wasn't overly great either, so they need Severson to step up, Provorov to step up. Can Juracek be a really good defender if he plays the full season? Will the Harris addition be really good for the Jackets? So they need to take another step forward for the Blue Jackets. And three, more scoring. As much as the defense when goaltending was atrocious last year, scoring wasn't too much better. So if they can get some more goal scoring production from this team, I think they can take a really good step forward. So in my opinion, goal scoring, better defense, and better goaltending are going to be major ways this team can improve to get better than last year. And lastly, going over to my current projected rating for this team, as it's right now, I think they got a little bit worse. I have to factor in the unfortunate news about Johnny Gaudreau, but besides that, they also made some interesting moves, like they traded Laine, they got out of that situation, didn't retain any cap, they moved on from Texier, acquired a 4th round pick, acquired Jordan Harris, moved on from a couple of really good young defenders in Boqvist and Bean and Blankenberg, also moved on from a couple of decent depth forwards, got Monahan, which was a really good add in my opinion, also had Jack Johnson, who I think could really help in the blue line, but didn't get a whole bunch better in my opinion, so I'm going to give them a C- rating. I think that's sort of warranted with where they are right now. I think they had a decent offseason, not one that's overly great, but also not one that's going to set them back a whole bunch. I do think they got a tiny bit worse on the blue line, and I don't think they really got a whole bunch better on the forward group, so in my opinion, I am going to give them a C- rating, and I think that's warranted with where the Jackets are at this point in time. So definitely, that's all I'm going to talk for today. I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of this down in the comment section below. What do you think about the Jackets and the Flyers? Do you agree they both had rather bad seasons, especially the Flyers with their collapse? Do you agree that both had decent off seasons, but both didn't do overly much? And do you agree that these two teams are poised for Jackets to get a little bit better than last year, Flyers to be a little bit worse than last year, but those two still to be the two bottom teams in the Metro Division? Definitely let your guys' thoughts on all of that down in the comment section below. So that's all for today. Remember to like this video, and if you're later, remember to subscribe down below. Thank you for all your support. We're never without you guys, so if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe button down below. Don't forget to comment down in the comment section below so I can also discuss in this video. I also have a blog talking about news, rumors, analysis, stuff for that, so remember to check that out. Leave a link down in the description below, and can't wait to see you guys all for next video. See you guys soon.